Hi guys, good morning. And just give me a minute, I'll share my screen. Let's start, guys. Anyway, sorry for keeping you waiting. Okay, and let's start. Okay, in last class we have started about S3, right? And let's go to S3. And S3 is a global storage, and regions will not apply to S3 service. But however, when you are creating an S3 bucket, you have to choose a region. That is there again. You are physically creating your S3 bucket in some region, so you have to choose that. And we already talked about S3, and we uploaded an object in S3 bucket. And let us look into S3 different types of S3, we can say, pricing models. Let me open the presentation. Yeah, we are talking about S3 properties, correct, Ipsit? Okay, I think I didn't download it yesterday. No problem. Let me open this. Let's say types of S3. And we know what S3 is. S3 is simple storage solution. That's why S3, 3S, right? And it's a object storage, and that means it stores data in the form of objects. And that's why it's flexible. You can store any kind of data in S3. Yes, and S3 is compatible with many services as we discussed. And coming to types of S3, types of S3 means nothing but we are talking about pricing models. Otherwise, all S3 are same more or less. The format is the same. The first type of S3 pricing model is standard. Standard S3, and standard S3, when you create the S3 bucket, they will also ensure redundance. The data that you store in the S3 bucket, the S3 bucket itself, they'll ensure that it should be redundant. So, what is redundancy? Redundancy means fail proof or fault tolerant. When it becomes fault tolerant or fail proof, if something happens to S3 bucket or something can happen to the network or storage to the infrastructure of the AWS data center, or might be natural calamities happen in that particular zone. So they always ensure that the data in your S3 bucket will have a backup in another availability zone in standard S3. In more than one availability zone, your data will be there. So within the region again, and it's not multi-region, within the, suppose you create your S3 bucket in Mumbai, when you upload an object, uh, AWS will ensure that they always have it in another availability zone also, uh, to make your backend fault tolerant and fail proof. That is nothing but redundant. So they are saying that when you are using S3, we ensure that data will be highly available, 99 point some 99999% available, as well as redundant. So they are saying that they are assuring, they are giving that assurance. That is standard S3 anyway. Sometimes we need to store data, but it's not so important. It's important, but not like if you lost the data, also okay. Log data, transactional data, server log data, say for example, we store it for audit purpose once in a year. We check it. So say telecom company is there, they store all their log data, and also data coming from customer, as a queries, customer complaints, etc. They are already resolved, but anyway, for improvement and also audit purpose, they need it. Once in a year they'll do this audit. For that purpose they'll keep a year long data in S3, for example. But it's not so uh, important for them. They don't frequently access it. And S3 is also, they say that it's a good, the speed also good, and it's when say available, it's not availability means whenever you want it will be there available. If they are giving that assurance means the speed at which you can get the data will also be high. And for such type of data, you need not use standard S3. You can use infrequent access. Because you're using it infrequent, still it is S3, say infrequent access. The prices of infrequent access than standard S3 is bit low, and still you can access your object, but the availability what they are assuring us will be slightly low, is very slightly low than standard S3. And again, in this infrequent access we have one zone infrequent access. One zone infrequent access. One zone infrequent access means, we already discussed, when you are uploading an object it will be an available, more than one availability zone, and we want to reduce our prices and we feel that our data is not so important, we are keeping there for particular purpose, but it is not so important. We also infrequently accesses that data, so then you can go for one zone infrequent access. And this is there. And after this we have our archivals. Archival means, suppose if you want to store data for very long period of time but you don't access it at all, but this data is important, you know, at some point of time we need this data, you don't frequently access it. It's not a your web server data used by web server or data used by your client applications. It's not that kind of data. um, right, it's not like part of your server, application server. It is some data, again like server log data, other data. You need this data but you don't access it. The such kind of data, if you want to store very long period of time, then you can use archival solutions, S3 archival solutions. And here you can store data for damn cheap prices. They are called as glaciers, and S3 glaciers, of course. And here we have glacier and deep archival glacier, or the deep glacier, I think. And for very low prices, when compared with the standard S3, you can it would be 90% less. The price for per GB will be around more than 90% less for storing data in Glacier. The only thing is, if you want to get the data from the Glacier, at that time you will be charged for retrieval. So retrieval charges will be more than storage charges in Glacier. And suppose you are storing 10 terabytes of data. So for example, in the Glacier, yes, for very low prices, you can store it. And from that 10 terabyte of data, if you want, say, 50 GB, you are retrieving 50 GB of data. So you will be charged with retrieval charges. That is one thing. And also the time. If you want to retrieve, you cannot retrieve the data immediately. Suppose if I upload any data object in S3 or other um, uh, standards, right? If infrequent access or one-zone infrequent access, I can access that immediately. We will get an URL. With that URL, either you can access via browser or you can download. Immediate access is there for these classes of S3. However, for glaciers, there is no immediate access. When you want to retrieve, it depends from 1 hour to 24 hours. It depends upon the type of glacier. If it is deep archive, you'll get storage for very damn cheap prices, and your retrieval, when you want to retrieve, the time will also be high. It varies somewhere from 1 hour to 24 hours. Previously, it used to be 24 hours, and then Google came. They are also offering these kind of object storage solution and also archival solution, and they are providing retrieval time within 1 hour and sometimes within 10-15 minutes. Even it is in archival data, they are giving you back. And with that competitor strategy, AWS also reduced its time. Now somewhere between 1 hour 2 hours, they have reduced the time. Previously it used to take 24 hours also to retrieve data from Glacier, depending upon the size and which archive it is. It's Glacier or deep archive. And we also have Snow family. Snow family also S3 storage actually, but you don't upload objects virtually. You don't go into account and upload like how we upload image yesterday. I have gone to S3 and then created a bucket and then uploaded a image. If data is okay, within the GBs, you can upload. What if you have terabytes of data and you want to migrate? Now you are not, we cannot use a term upload here. You cannot upload object by object. All that, say, 5 terabytes of data is there, and that is the data of the entire organization. And now they have decided to move it to S3. They are migrating to S3, AWS S3, and uploading it might not be possible. In such scenarios, what is the case is they'll request for Snow family. And again, in their Snow family, there is a regular Snow family. Okay, there is regular Snow family and mobile Snow family mobile. Snow family, if you request based on the size of data, they will send you a device, or a person will visit your organization from AWS with that device, and they'll copy all of your data in the device and they will put back it in AWS data center. So after it is done, using your S3 console, you can access the data you have migrated. And Snow family mobile, if data is so huge, they'll come with that vehicle with all the infrastructure in it, the storage infrastructure, and they itself will migrate your all storage. They'll write all your storage into the infrastructure devices, storage devices which they bought, and they'll put back them in AWS data center. And again, through a AWS organization account, this organization can access the data. So that is Snow family. And we also have a storage gateway. All these terms are related to S3. The underlying storage is S3 kind of a storage, but how people access it, upload images, not images, sorry, data, uh, will be a different one. I say storage gateway means we already know what gateway is. It's a entry point. It allows something. And storage gateway is a gateway from your local device or your local environment to S3. You have some virtual connection. Instead of the public internet, you can set a storage gateway from your local device or from your local environment, local organization's environment. Suppose a organization already has a storage solution, and they can set a storage gateway from their local storage and to S3. Storage gateway is also there. So these are we say classes, different classes of S3. And let us go to management console and just give me a minute, guys. Okay, and let's go to see S3. We have S3 Glacier and a storage gateway. Let us go into S3, and we already created one bucket. This one, I think this one we created yesterday. These are the objects we have uploaded. And coming to properties, we'll start with this. And there is something called as bucket versioning. The first property means you can keep multiple variants of an object. Suppose you are creating a report, it can be audit report or any visualization report, and you're creating some kind of report or developing some project, and changes are done, and you have created a report, uploaded it to S3 bucket, and then you have made some changes to the report, and then you re-uploaded it. It can be applied to any script also, where you are keeping that in your S3 bucket. Then how it treats, if bucket versioning is enabled right now, bucket versioning is disabled for this bucket. So if I upload the same object once again, if I upload a single object with a single name multiple times, S3 bucket cannot recognize it as an another version. Where when bucket versioning is enabled, it treats it as an another version of it. Let us enable enable. Go to objects. I have this .csv file, right? Let us upload the same file once again. Upload. Is it this one? Okay, upload. See, but I have only one. I have uploaded the same object multiple times, but I can see only one. Why? Because I have enabled bucket versioning. If I want to look into the older, so this is the latest one which I have uploaded. Let us disable this, or let us keep it and like create one text document. This is version 1, and let us call it sample and upload. Okay, upload. Close, and this is sample.txt. Let us make it public. Close and open this. So this is version 1. Now I'll make it to 2. My bucket and upload. Add files. Sample. See, I have same sample.txt. Let us open this. And anyway, we already made it public. Click on this. Okay. The new latest item, we have to make it public. Make public and close. So this is version 2. And where is version 1? Version 1 is also there here. But since the bucket versioning is enabled, and when the same object is uploaded again or uploaded multiple times, your S3 bucket treats it then another variants of it, another versions of the same file. And here we have this switch button. It will toggle in between, like on or off. So now it shows the versions. See, I have another version of this file and another version of this file. This is the older version. Older version is there. And this is the newer version. And it always shows newer version in front. However, if you want to go back to older versions, you have to uh, make it on. Show versions should be enabled, and then you will be able to see version. And versioning also brings one more advantage. Suppose if you delete any versioned file, and we are talking about only versioned bucket. If you delete any object in versioned bucket, you can restore it. And this advantage is there for only versioned buckets. If your versioning is not enabled, then you cannot have this restoring back. Like if you delete anything, it will go and sit in recycle bin, right? If we can go and restore if you want, within few time, I think 30 days or so, right? You can go and restore the objects from recycle bin. In the same way, S3 also providing a facility to restore versioned objects, and this is possible in version bucket only. Let us delete one. I'll delete sample.txt. Deleting this. Yeah, delete is here. Delete. Delete objects. Right, sample.txt is gone. If I want to restore it again, I have these show versions, right? I'll go to show versions. Sample.txt has been deleted, and we have one thing created called delete marker. It says that it's a marker um, saying that sample.txt got deleted. AWS assigns this delete marker to the objects which got deleted, and again versioned objects. So if we want to restore it, delete the delete marker. So delete marker is like a pointer which keeps sample.txt not available in S3. In that list of objects, you will not find sample.txt because you deleted it. And delete marker is a pointer which conveys the same, that file has deleted. If you delete the delete marker, then you can restore the file. Simple. Clear, guys, about delete marker? So when you delete any file, a delete marker is set to it, attached to it. If you delete that one, you can restore. Let us delete this. Delete. Close. See, I got my sample.txt file back. This is one more advantage with version buckets. Going to properties again, that is bucket versioning. We have enabled bucket versioning. And tags, anyway, no. If you want to provide any tags to your bucket, yes, you can edit tags. So let us say I use this bucket to store some log details, not log details, say what we say, marketing details or sales details. So the role of this bucket is marketing. So tags. And default encryption is disabled anyway. If you want object store in this bucket in an encrypted format, then enable it. edit. If you try to enable, it will ask you what kind of encryption has to be used. Is it SSE, which is an a mechanism to encrypt? It's a 128-bit encryption. Yes, you can, and you have key management service, and it's also SSE format of encryption. But key management service, you will manage the keys. Whereas here, if you want the key, your object to be encrypted with certain key. So what are encrypted keys? We already used one encrypted key, which is .pem file. We downloaded EC2 while creating EC2 instances. We downloaded the .pem file, Amazon root CA, which we downloaded, if you remember. So that is 128-bit SSE encryption, which we that is a format. So if you want to assign an encryption to your object, yes, you can. And this is like AWS manages it. AWS creates, manages this encryption key for you. However, if you want to use your own encrypted key, then you have key management service. You can manage set of keys, and within that keys you can assign one. Again, choose from your AWS KMS key, but right now I don't have a one, so list is empty anyway. So that's about encryption. So let us disable it for now. Save changes. Okay, properties, tags, default encryption, intelligent tiering, archive configuration. Uh, at the starting of the class, we talked about different classes of S3. So they are actually not types, classes, different classes of S3. If you want your data objects to switch between these classes, why? Because you can optimize your cost. We know standard if you store your data in infrequent access or in archive, you can optimize your costs. So you need not pay every time for only standard S3, because sometimes data becomes old and people will not access it frequently. Then based upon that time, you can create a configuration. Let's go and see what it is. Let's call it as demo. Configuration. And then configuration, limit the scope of this configuration using one or more filters, and it asks a prefix. So what is prefix? So let's create one prefix and get back to this. So prefix is not mandatory here anyway, it's optional. Without prefix also you can continue. If I choose this configuration applies to all objects in the bucket, then prefix is gone. But let's see what prefix is. Prefix is nothing but a folder, but actually it's not a folder format. We already talked about S3 bucket um, d- doesn't know the file system. It treats every data item as an object. But however, you can create a folder here. Create folder. Let's call it as a data folder. Create folder. Upload object. So let us upload this once again. or go to downloads. Suppose I want to keep these keys. Let us upload this. Open, upload, close. Then, so this is prefix. Actually, it's a folder, but it is folder is nothing but a prefix in front of the object name. See, this is the actual object name. If we go and look into the object URL, there is a prefix slash data. Slash data is the prefix in front of the objects, and the object which I store in this folder will get this prefix. Actually, they are nothing but prefixes, um, words, terms added in front of the object name. And for our convenience, AWS calling it as folders, but they are not. There is no file system like a folder, but it's just a prefix, uh, a term or a word in front of the object name. And let's go back to properties. Create configuration, demo. By default, limit the scope of this configuration. If you want to apply this to all the objects in the bucket, choose this one. If you want to apply this configuration to only certain folders or prefixes, then enter the prefix. So data is the prefix, right? Slash data is the prefix. And then object tags, and you can also use object tags here. Let's only give the prefix and the status enable, and archive settings, archive access tier or deep access tier. After some time I want this to go to archive, so it takes 3 to 5 hours to retrieve from archive, that is Glacier. Let's say after 90 days we don't want this, we will send it to archive and also deep archive. So if it is for 180 days, if the object uh, age has become 180 days, then we will send to deep archive and create. So this is what we are doing when objects become old, when you no more need them. If there is any such kind of objects with respect to time, they become old, you don't access them, such kind of data you can send to archival. Some data, we call it as real time data, and the value will also be in real time. Say for example, social media data, um, and data coming from search engines. Right, the data coming from the search engine, someone is searching for, looking for particular keyword or particular file, uh, and it has to be written to him at that point of time. If it is a OTT platform, and OTT platform maintains all the names, movie names, etc., in the database, and their query came from their search engine. A guy is looking for certain movie, and showing the result is the response from the server, and it's job done, and the data that came from the client is no longer, we once we have sent the response, we don't need it. So there are some kind of data, the data coming from devices, device data, sensor data, all these kind of data used for machine learning, where processing has to be done in real time. Once it's over, we don't access the data. So such kind of data you can move to archival, and you can set a time limit. I'm saying after, if data is age is more than 90 or it is 90, then send to archive, and if it is 180, then send to deep archive. Clear about this? And cancel. And that is intelligent tiering archive configuration. And server access logging, and it's disabled. If you want to know uh, how your bucket is getting accessed, people you have some objects in the bucket, and this bucket, say if it is accessed by your web server, or bucket has some content which is given to which is accessible by clients, simple clients can access it. And if you want to know how people are accessing these objects, server access logging, if you enable this, then get request, put requests means uploading and data into S3. Get request, when people are accessing objects from the S3, all the details will be logged in. So edit, enable. By enabling S3 access logging, S3 console will automatically update with access control list. So anyway, you have to give the target bucket. Target bucket, it's better to use another S3 bucket. Let us see. This is the bucket which we are using. Let us use this as a target bucket. Then what happens? My bucket is S3, my S3 demo dot bucket. That is this bucket, and all the access details, all those logging will be done in this bucket. Save changes. After some time, after 10 or 20 minutes, you can go and check this bucket. Your details will get logged in. Anyway, save changes. We will see that. Unexpected API response. Cross. Maybe this bucket is in a different location. Server access logging, edit, enable. Let us choose any other bucket, and that has to be in Mumbai region. I think this bucket is in Singapore region, so the both the buckets has to be in the same region. So let's say CloudTrail demo bucket is there. Let's choose that one. And we should be careful with bucket server access logging. If you keep it enabled, what happens? Unnecessarily, the other bucket data will get piled up in other bucket, and our free trail limit is 5 GB. Of all the buckets, the data you can store is 5 GB for free. If you have other buckets, and if you also have the server access logging, unnecessarily the data, it might be less because it's just log details, but maybe it could be some KB with respect to time, it might become 1 GB. Unnecessarily storing that data since we are testing. So disable, always check once lab is done, disable the server access logging. And then AWS CloudTrail data events. We will talk about this later while talking about CloudTrail. Event notification. Suppose you are selling some, uh, you are selling, not selling, sharing some content with you on a payment basis. Say it can be you are a guy who does these projects, and projects for, say, college and university students. You provide them assistance, and this is your prep, like a what you said, that extra job, uh, that extra job you do. And suppose if someone is try to access the content from the S3, you should get a notification. Event name, just give any name. So this is demo. If you want give a prefix, you can. Suffix, we know the extensions. Anyway, both are optional, we can leave. So if someone is trying to put object in your S3 bucket, because this S3 bucket is shared with few people, say for example, or if you are a guy, a group of people are doing some project, developing some application, and they are using S3 for their storage. They are putting all the content required for their web application in S3. And these guys should get notified when other guys are requesting the object, or when the other people put a new content, you should get notified. So then if someone puts means uploads. Post is also the same thing, put and post. If someone put or post, you should get a notification. So do SNS topic, you will get a notification. Or if you want to trigger any lambda function, you can also do that. Suppose when data is put into the S3 bucket, then you can trigger some lambda function, so that that data should be streamed to some analytical platform. Whenever a new data entry is there, that new data entry has to be streamed to some machine learning tool. So then you can give a lambda function and create one. Or if you want to get a notification in the use case which we have to, a group of people working on the project, then they have their content in S3. If people post the any new content, the users of S3 should get notification. Then you can use SNS topic. And SQS. SQS is also a notification, but not like SMS or email notifications. It's a notification which you can send to server or a application. That is SQS. And these are all other events which are related to S3: put, post, or uploading images, copying the image, multi-part upload completed. Sometimes we face this if you are trying to upload anything, maybe because of its large size or because of network issues, it will be incomplete. So we have experienced this sometimes downloading from the internet, especially large size files. They'll end up with incomplete download. Some part of they'll 70%, 80% will get downloaded, and finally download gets failed due to network or due to its large size. Similarly, upload also. When we try to upload any data like that, it happens sometimes. And same thing with S3. When you try to upload any content in S3, sometimes it becomes incomplete. If that upload is complete, you should get a notification. So multi-part upload completed, right? Multi-part uploads means the incomplete uploads, they are not completed. If they are completed, you can trigger any one of this action. And other events, when objects are deleted, delete marker created. So permanently deleted means there will be no delete marker. So, or delete marker created means you have an option of restoring it. Just now we have talked about it in such cases. Or when objects are restored in such cases. Reduced redundancy. This is one more class which we forgot. Standard S3 infrequent access, one zone infrequent access. Next to standard S3, we have reduced redundancy. Okay, reduced redundancy is like this is a S3, which is standard S3, but there is no backup. Reduced redundancy, the name itself says it's the when you upload any object in reduced redundancy bucket, you will have that object stored in only one availability zone, not more than that. That is reduced redundancy. So you are not saying that it's infrequent access. You access it frequently, but you don't want a backup plan. Right, you can get it for cheaper prices. That is reduced redundancy. And going back, yeah, reduce redundancies. If object lost events, any events are lost, that means if someone trying to get but unable to do it, unable to access the file, and reduce redundancy storage. However, they are saying that it will not possible with standard S3. So in reduce redundancy lost objects, if any scenario occurs like that, you can get a notification or trigger any Lambda function. And other replication events. Replication means you can replicate data objects in another bucket, which we will see now. And we don't want this. I'm not saving this. Event notification. That's about event notification. We have transfer acceleration, object log, and requester pace. All these things are there. So let us talk about transfer acceleration. Uh, to speed up, uh, your S3 has some content, and that content has to be delivered in high speed. Example, video streams. A OTT platform is having their video streams in S3 bucket. And when client requests for particular video, it has to stream from S3 itself. And we want that transfer has to be very quick. Right, here latency matters, speed has to be high. In such scenarios, you can go for this, enable this transfer acceleration. Say edit, enable transfer acceleration, save changes. Why API response? Okay, there should not be dot in the name, it seems. My bucket name is S3 dot bucket. So let's go to some other bucket. Because I have so many buckets here, let us choose one without the dot extension. Transcribe demo 360. Let's choose this and I'll check the permissions. Public access off, and go to properties. And enable transfer acceleration. Enable. Yes, we have successfully enabled the transfer acceleration. How this transfer acceleration works is it uses edge location. Edge locations means they are distributed locations all over the world. We will talk about this later, edge locations, but now transfer acceleration provides you high speed. And let us upload any object and test this. And we cannot actually experience the time for images or documents. If it is a video, yes, we can see the how fast it when it is requested using transfer acceleration and without transfer acceleration. This is some automatic attendance tracking. Don't know what it is. It's MP4 video. 9.4 MB, but I'm not sure what this video is. I can play or not. Okay. Anyway, let us we have this .mpv4 video, right? And now I have two ways of accessing this video. Let us make it public first. Actions, make public, close. One is this one. Using this, I can access this video. It will get streamed. This is normal access, uh, normal access via internet. Whereas we have also enabled transfer acceleration, right? Go to properties. If I want to speed up, then this is accelerated endpoint. I need to use this one, transcribe demo 360. So I have to use this endpoint rather than using that. Okay. Okay then guys, rest of the properties and permissions, we will talk about them in our next class. That is going to be on Monday, right? Okay, see you on Monday. Okay, and bye bye. Happy weekend, everyone. Yep, bye.